It's me again, Robert Chen, 92 years old, still breathing, still learning things I should have known decades ago. Before I tell you what's on my mind today, I need you to do something for me. Don't scroll away. Don't check your phone. What I'm about to share isn't easy to hear, and it sure wasn't easy to live through. But it saved me from wasting what little time I had left, and I believe it might do the same for you. So, let me take you back to 2003. I was 69 years old, just retired from 42 years at Pacific Gas and Electric in San Francisco. Good pension, decent savings, nice little house in Daly City that my wife Margaret and I had paid off 15 years earlier. We had plans: travel, grandkids, maybe buy an RV and see the national parks. Normal retirement dreams, the kind everyone has. Margaret died 4 months after I retired. Aneurysm. No warning. She was folding laundry on a Tuesday afternoon and just collapsed. Gone before the ambulance arrived. We were supposed to have 20 more years together. We got 16 weeks. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because what happened next is the thing that matters. After Margaret passed, I did what most people do. I kept busy. I mowed the lawn twice a week, even though it didn't need it. I organized the garage 7 times. I drove to Costco every Thursday and bought things I didn't need just to have somewhere to go. I watched Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune every single night like it was a religious obligation. From the outside, I was handling it. People would ask how I was doing, and I'd say, "Fine, keeping busy. You know how it is." But inside, I was disappearing. Not dying exactly. Worse than that. I was becoming invisible to myself. I'd sit at the kitchen table eating dinner and realize I couldn't remember making it. Couldn't remember the taste. Couldn't remember anything except the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. One night, maybe 8 months after Margaret died, I'm sitting in my recliner watching some cop show I didn't care about, and the thought came to me clear as a bell. This is it. This is how you're going to spend the next 10 or 15 years until you die, sitting in this chair, waiting. That thought didn't make me sad. It made me angry. Really angry. At myself, mostly. Because I realized I'd handed my entire life over to routine and obligation for so long that I didn't know how to do anything else. Even with all the time in the world, I was still just going through motions. Now, most people when they hit rock bottom either stay there or do something dramatic. Sell everything, move to Costa Rica, chase some fantasy. I didn't do either. What happened instead changed everything, and it happened because of a woman named Delores Martinez. Delores lived 3 houses down from me. I'd waved at her for 20 years, but never really talked to her. She was maybe 10 years younger than me, taught elementary school before retiring. One Saturday morning, she knocked on my door holding a casserole dish and said something I'll never forget. She said, "Robert, I've been watching you die in slow motion for 8 months and I can't watch it anymore." I didn't know what to say. She didn't wait for me to respond. She told me she was going to a ceramics class at the senior center on Wednesday mornings and I was coming with her. Not an invitation. A command. I tried to make excuses. I don't do art. I'm not creative. I'd be terrible at it. She looked at me and said, "Good. Being terrible at something new is better than being good at being miserable." Then she walked away. That Wednesday, 7:30 in the morning, Delores knocked again. I opened the door still in my pajamas thinking she'd forgotten. She hadn't. She stood there with her arms crossed and said, "You've got 10 minutes. So I went. That ceramics class, in the basement of the Daly City Senior Center with fluorescent lights humming and 8 people I'd never met. That ridiculous little class saved my life. Not because I discovered I was good at pottery. I wasn't. My first bowl looked like something a drunk person made during an earthquake. The instructor, a woman named Ruth, who had to be 85 if she was a day, looked at it and said, "Well, it's abstract, very postmodern. But for those 2 hours every Wednesday morning." I wasn't the widower. I wasn't the retired engineer. I wasn't the man whose wife died folding laundry. I was just a guy trying to center clay on a wheel, and failing spectacularly. And that small, pointless thing filled a hole in me that 42 years of steady employment and a paid-off mortgage never touched. Delores and I started having coffee after class. She told me about her husband, Eduardo, who died in '98 from lung cancer. She told me how after he passed, she spent 2 full years sitting in her house angry at God, angry at the world, angry at Eduardo for leaving her. She said her daughter finally told her, "Mom, you're not honoring Dad's memory by turning into a ghost. He'd hate what you're doing to yourself." That hit her like a lightning bolt. She realized she'd been so focused on what she'd lost that she'd stopped seeing what was still here. So she started saying yes to things. Ceramics class, book club at the library, volunteering at the food bank, teaching ESL classes to immigrants at the community center. She looked at me across that sticky Formica table at Denny's and said, "Robert, grief is mandatory, but suffering is optional. You get to choose how you spend the time you have left." I sat there with my cold coffee and felt something crack open in my chest, because she was right. I'd been treating the rest of my life like a waiting room, like the good part was over and all that was left was killing time until I died. What a waste. What an insult to Margaret, who would have given anything for one more day. After that conversation, I made changes, small ones at first. I joined a hiking group for seniors. Every Saturday morning, rain or shine, we'd drive out to Muir Woods or Point Reyes or Mount Tamalpais. I hadn't hiked since I was 40. Thought my knees couldn't handle it. Turns out they could, with the right boots and enough ibuprofen. I met people on those hikes. Real people, not just neighbors I waved at. There was Frank, a retired mail carrier who'd walked 25 miles a day for 30 years and had stories that would make you cry laughing. There was Helen, a former nurse who'd delivered over 2,000 babies and remembered details about half of them. There was Jimmy, a Korean War vet who'd never talked about the war until he hit 70 and then couldn't stop. We'd sit on rocks overlooking the Pacific Ocean, eating sandwiches and trail mix, and I'd think, how did I live in the Bay Area for 50 years and never do this? The answer was simple. I'd been too busy being productive, too busy working, raising kids, maintaining the house, doing all the things responsible adults do. And all of that mattered. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that I was allowed to exist outside of my obligations. I started volunteering at the VA hospital, reading to patients who couldn't hold books anymore. I joined a men's group at the senior center where we played cards and talked about everything from prostate problems to what we believed happened after we died. I took a watercolor painting class and discovered I had absolutely no talent, but I didn't care because mixing colors on a palette made me feel like a kid again. None of this brought Margaret back. Nothing could. But I started to feel like I was living again instead of just occupying space. The days stopped blending together. I had things to look forward to. Wednesday ceramics, Saturday hikes, Tuesday volunteer shifts, Thursday card games. These small, ordinary things gave my life structure that wasn't about obligation. It was about choice, about being present. Now I can hear some of you thinking, "That's nice, Robert, but I don't have the energy for all that. I'm tired. I'm dealing with things you don't understand." You're right. I don't know your situation, but I do know this. The excuse that we're too old, too tired, too broken, that's almost never the real problem. The real problem is we've convinced ourselves that the best parts of life are behind us, and all that's left is managing decline. That's a lie, a dangerous one. Your life isn't over until it's over, and even if you've got 5 years left or 5 months, you get to decide how you spend them. You can spend them waiting, or you can spend them living. Not doing big things, not checking off bucket lists, just being present, being curious, saying yes to things that scare you a little. Delores told me something I think about almost every day. She said, "The worst betrayal isn't death. It's surviving someone you love and then refusing to live the life they'd want you to have." Margaret would have wanted me on those hiking trails. She would have wanted me laughing with Frank and Helen and Jimmy. She would have wanted me covered in clay dust, making terrible bowls that leaked water. She wouldn't have wanted me in that recliner staring at the TV waiting to die. The ceramics class led to other things. I reconnected with my daughter Sarah, who I'd barely talked to after Margaret died because I didn't know what to say. Turns out she didn't need me to say anything. She just needed me to show up. I started going to my grandson's baseball games. something I'd always been too busy for when I was working. I became the old guy in the stands who knew everyone's stats and brought orange slices. I learned to cook. Actually cook, not just heat up Stouffer's. I took a community college class called Cooking for One and met 6 other people who were all eating frozen dinners every night and pretending it was fine. We started having potlucks once a month. My chicken piccata is still terrible, but my roasted vegetables are pretty decent, and that's something. My circumstances didn't change. I still lived alone. Margaret was still gone. My knees still hurt when it rained. But I was different inside. I'd gone from existing to living. And the distance between those two things is bigger than you'd think. If something in this story is hitting home, I want you to try one thing, not next week. Today. Think of something you used to enjoy before life got so heavy. Maybe you gardened. Maybe you played harmonica. Maybe you liked going to museums or writing letters or watching birds. Whatever it was, do it this week. Doesn't matter if you're good at it. Doesn't matter if anyone else cares. Do it because the version of you that used to light up doing it is still in there. Dusty, quiet, maybe forgotten, but still alive. Delores passed in 2017, 81 years old, died in her sleep, which is about as good as it gets. At her funeral, 23 people spoke. Not one person mentioned her teaching career. They talked about who she was, the woman who showed up when you needed her, the woman who made you laugh when you wanted to cry, the woman who wouldn't let you give up on yourself. That's the legacy I want. Not accomplishments or awards. A life built from showing up, staying curious, and refusing to disappear while I'm still breathing. I wasted years after Margaret died being a ghost. Don't waste yours. This channel is where people who've lived long enough to know better share what they learned the hard way. If that means something to you, subscribe, turn on notifications, because I've got more to say. Leave me a comment and tell me, what's that one thing you stopped doing that you want to pick back up? And give this a like. It helps more than you'd think.